And good evening, everyone. And my apologies too. It's my Wi-Fi. Blame Virgin. That's what I'm going to do later. So let's kick off. We have an interesting topic for this evening. Patrick Freyne does the television reviews in the Irish Times, and I really recommend his column. And last Friday, the week just gone, he was talking about Ireland's fittest family. And this is some of what he said. He was talking about how the programme is strangely compelling. And he said, perhaps it's because the first task the competing families undertake involves people clinging upside down to a log suspended across a mucky trench filled with filthy water. As metaphors for 2021 go, this isn't the worst. Are we not all, in a very real way, hanging on for dear life from a log suspended over a filthy trench? I quite like that. There's something about that image of a filthy trench, which is quite good for 2021. And that thought that we're hanging on for dear life is true for some of us. In lots of different ways, there's things that we're just not coping that well with. And there was a survey done by the CSO, which was on life satisfaction, on our well-being. And only 12% of people in Ireland said that their life satisfaction at the moment was high. Now, maybe that's just stating the obvious, but it's an enormous drop from nearly half just 2 years ago. We are sort of struggling here. And when you think about all the things that we've lost in lockdown, we can understand why. Now, the most obvious one is freedom. And that's what lockdown means. Lockdown means these restrictions that we're facing, lots of big things and little ordinary everyday things that we used to be able to do, we're not allowed to do at the moment. We are restricted. Just simple things like our 5K rule at the moment means we can't go anywhere we'd like to go in the city. We can't just go into a coffee shop and order something and sit down and relax. That is taken away from us. So freedom is pretty obvious. But I actually think that the biggest thing that we are missing, the key one, is community. Community. Like, because a lot of the restrictions actually revolve around that. Like the 5K limit means that I can't see my family. And lots of friends are outside the 5K limit as well. We're not allowed household visits. That's gone too. And even when we were in a lower lockdown, level 3 or something, there was social distancing. So even if you could see people, it wasn't quite the same. So community is a struggle. We have Zoom, which we're using this evening. And to be honest, I hadn't heard of it or used the platform until before March of last year. And it's great. I'm glad for it, but it's just not quite the same doing stuff virtually, is it? And so what this means when communities struggle is that we are lonely people at the moment. It's a pandemic of COVID, but it's leading to an epidemic of loneliness. Another survey by the CSO found that 25%, a quarter of us, are feeling lonely at the moment. A second one I found from 2 universities said actually it was at 40%. We are a lonely people. My second child is 10, and she has an art competition at school at the moment. And school, that's well, in my kitchen, but you know, it's from the school. She's doing it in my kitchen, homeschooling. And it's to do something arty around what you're looking forward to in 2021. And what she's done so far is she's got 2 clay people, little small clay people the size of my hands, and they're both standing there with their arms out. And she's got a little heart, which she's going to put in between. And it's going to be an image of 2 people desperate to hug because they love each other. We've lost that sense of touch, which is part of community. So community, I think, is the key. But there's another one that I've come across in the surveys I've checked out, and this is meaning. Meaning. It was a survey done by Amoric Research, and they found that 45% of people, that is nearly half, 1 in 2 of us, actually find that they are thinking more about questions like what is the meaning of life, more than they did before. And a third of people are actually having conversations around things like that. To me, that's sort of surprising. So we have freedom, community, and meaning. Now, I'm going to sort of take it from 2 angles this evening. One, maybe most obviously, is what we should do. What are the practical things and sort of daily wisdom of how we can live our lives to help us through these strange times? But I also first want to just dig a little bit deeper to see, what does living through these days teach us about a life worth living in general? So I want to use a quote from one of my favorite authors, an Australian guy who sort of looks at culture. His name's Mark Sayers, and he says that human beings need to have 3 tanks in life to live a fulfilling and satisfying life. We need a tank of freedom, a tank of community, and a tank of meaning. The 3 topics that we've already come across. And when he explains this, his point is that it's not just freedom that we need. You know, and he says it like that because in the Western world, freedom is elevated above all the others. Freedom is sort of put as number 1. We have this core belief in the West that if you take human beings, take individuals, and set them free, let them do what they want, then they will flourish. And so freedom as a theme drips through our culture and through our land. You watch nearly anything from Hollywood, from war movies to thrillers, and from coming of age dramas, and freedom is a core theme. Now, freedom is really important. I mean, there's truth to this. And in the West, we have this love of freedom because our culture developed after fighting fascism in the Second World War and communism thereafter. And those battles were obviously good, so freedom's a good thing. But the problem is we don't just need freedom. You know, we are happy when we're free, but actually we need those other things too. We need meaning in our lives, and we need deep relational connections. And Sayers' point is that in the West at the moment, not now specifically in lockdown, but in general, in where we are in history, in the West, we are drowning in freedom, but we're thirsty for meaning. And when you're in that state, adding more freedom in, when your freedom tank is already full, is not going to help you have a happier or more satisfying life. What we need to work on are the other 2 tanks where there's low reserves, meaning and community. So we need community as well as freedom. And I think that's been the key thing in the lockdown. The restrictions that have impacted the most are the ones that have deprived us of community. That's certainly what I feel. Sort of, when you finally do get to talk to someone, you feel like you've nothing to say because you haven't talked to anyone else before that. And also what COVID and the lockdown that are associated with it has taught us is that these 3 tanks, they compete with each other. They're in competition because the restrictions that we're feeling are decreasing our personal freedom for the sake of community, for the sake of others. We are restricting our movements to keep other people safe. And if you take the extreme example, and we've seen scenes in certain towns in America where people have been refusing to obey restrictions, refusing to wear a face mask as an example, they're doing that because they're saying it's attacking their personal freedom. Now, whatever your view on that is, there's a tension there. These tanks can compete with each other. And when we get to trade-offs, when we consider our life and how we lead our life, we need to actually think carefully. Many of us don't really think about how we live our lives. We just get on and do it. But we need to think now. Who are we going to listen to? Where are we going to go for wisdom on balancing these trade-offs? So as well as freedom, we need community, but we also need meaning. That, for me, was a surprising result of the surveys that I checked out. We need meaning. And why? Why is that? Why are people feeling this desire for meaning? I think practically maybe because our freedom has been taken away, we've lost sources of meaning. We can't hang out with each other, which is one way we get meaning. We can't go to museums or theaters. I sound very highbrow there, I'm not really. But these sources of meaning have been taken away from us. But I also think it's deeper. I think meaning is important for tough times. It gets us through tough times. Viktor Frankl wrote the classic work, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist, and he, during the war, was sent to Auschwitz. And he was there having already trained as a psychiatrist, so he observed his fellow detainees in Auschwitz, and he wrote about his experience afterwards, observing them. And he found that even in Auschwitz, a purpose-built death camp, he found that some people could find meaning. Now, it was small bits of meaning, helping other people just survive the day. But the prisoners who found meaning, he thought, were the ones who had the strength to endure the death camp. Meaning is actually crucial for the days in which we live. Okay, so if you're with me on those 3 themes, practically, what can we do as we turn to that side? Well, with freedom taking that first in the same order, freedom, We can't change the restrictions. You or I can't do much about that. We just sort of have to wait to get our freedoms back. But how do we wait without these freedoms? I think there's a few things we could do. Number one, actually gratitude. Practice gratitude. If we sit back, gain some perspective, actually the key personal freedoms of believing what you want to believe, of listening who you want to listen to, of just being able to eat what you want to eat, we still have those things. They haven't been taken away. Let's reflect on that and be grateful. And secondly, let's actually reflect on how we've used our freedoms in the past. We're now so conscious of not having freedom. What did we do when we could have gone anywhere we wanted to, at any time we wanted to? Did we do all these amazing things? Or did people just go to Pennies to buy something they didn't actually need? So I think let's use those two things, gratitude and then reflection. With community, I think community is the key one. So let me be clear on this. Number one, fight for your community. Fight for relationships. Fight to maintain whatever contact you can these days. We all need it. We need relationship. So phone people, text people, WhatsApp people, Zoom people, email, write. If you haven't written in years a card or a postcard or whatever, write to people. Just do what you can to make contact with other people. Go outside your front door and talk to your neighbours. Go for a walk around your streets and just smile and say hello to passers-by you don't even know. And I bet you they will smile or say hello back, obviously from two distance apart. But do that. We need that. Secondly, I would say work on the depth as well as the breadth of your relationships. Now, our breadth of relationships, how many people we're in contact with on a weekly basis, has undoubtedly shrunk. And I miss that. I miss going into my office job and having banter and all of that. But we need depth, particularly in these times. We need to be open and honest and talk about how we're feeling, because there's times we're not doing so well. So let's do that. Let's have deep conversations with people. And thirdly, even the times when you don't really feel like you need community, be community to others, because as a society we need it now. So that's community. Meaning. With meaning, one big point is we need to find other sources of meaning. And so much of the meaning that we get day to day has been stripped from us. If you get meaning in consumerism, you can't go to the shops like you used to want to, just go online. If you find meaning in just having the crack, then you can't go to pubs and restaurants and meet with people. If you find meaning in adventure, then you can't go traveling like you had planned or wanted to. So we have to find meaning. Let me give you 3 thoughts. There's lots of ways you can find simple everyday meaning. Beauty. I know lots of people who are reawakening to their love of nature. On the news a week or 2 ago, Birdwatch Ireland said they had 2,000 new members in the last year. Beauty does something to us, something inside us that gives us meaning. And likewise art. Art does something to us, speaks to our inner selves. So go pick a good book. Go listen to some new music. Enjoy art. And the last word is creativity. Just go make something. Gardening, cooking, art itself, whatever it might be, go do something like that. And, you know, I think don't be afraid to keep thinking and asking questions about life. When the ancients searched for the good life or a life worth living, that included asking questions. They weren't afraid doing it. And for me, living through the pandemic and the lessons that I've seen from it, it means asking the question, these 3 tanks of community, meaning and freedom, how well balanced are they in our lives? And have we fallen into this Western trap of concentrating so much on freedom? Now, the practical answer to that is to adjust our lives, to pull one lever down and push another lever up and just readjust the balance and get a healthier balance between those 3 tanks in our lives. And I think that's worth exploring. That's worth doing that. It's important that we have all 3. But I wonder, what if there's actually something deeper out there for us? What if there's an answer within? What if it's possible that there's a freedom out there that doesn't actually compete with meaning and community? What if there's a freedom that is not just about personal choice and me getting my way. A freedom that is divorced by the me, myself, and I mentality of our age. See, that would actually be a freedom to be, to just simply be in the lives of other people and have true community, to just live with them and serve them and love them. A freedom to be and not just to get. But also, what that would do is that would decenter ourselves from the preoccupation we have with ourselves and our own lives. And if we do that, it frees us up to find meaning outside of ourselves, meaning in the world, meaning in beauty, in justice, in other things. I think we've got to search for that freedom. Is that possible? And for me, this is where faith has come to help me. Because what we're talking about here is personal change. And if you've watched Operation Transformation or any reality show, you know personal change is always the hardest change to get. And this is inner heart change. But here, faith has been great for me during the pandemic. And it's not just that it gives me a relationship with a God who himself gives me community during tough times, or that it gives me meaning because it points to a future world and I then get hope through that. It's also this sense of something deeper, of freedom, a freedom that is a freedom in some ways from just a focus on myself. Because at the heart of faith is a devotion to God, to a living supreme being. And what that does is that knocks ourselves off number one. Now, on one level, that's not what you want to hear. That goes against our Western world. But actually, that is the great freedom to have that. Because that's the freedom which enables us to look beyond ourselves, find meaning beyond ourselves, to actually be in community where we're not just thinking what I can get from this, but just enjoying other people as they are. That's what we really need. That's a freedom that fits with community and meaning and helps us provide and receive those two things. You see, I believe that this God changes us, that as we spend time with this God, whoever you spend time with in life influences you and changes you. And as we follow the ways of this God, we will be changed bit by bit from the inside out, our values, our hearts, our affections, our desires. And we can step into this freedom. And that's a freedom that sits well with community and with meaning. I think that's the freedom that we really crave. So look, let me pause there for this evening. Thank you for listening.